On behalf of the Department of English, Berhampur University, I have the pleasure of welcoming all of you to this August afternoon where Dr. Oana-Alis Zaharia will be giving us a talk on a lecture plus seminar on To Be or Not to Be filmed, Shakespeare's Hamlet on Screen. I welcome my colleagues, Dr. Balabhadra Tripathi, Dr. T. Ishwar Rao, Mr. Anil Kumar Piria, and why is it not audible? They say it's not audible. Is it audible, Deepshika? Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Maybe it's somebody else's problem. Anyway, and thank you, Dr. Zaharia, for having agreed so quickly to give this talk. And we are all absolutely obliged to you. Our students are very excited about this talk because Hamlet is taught in all the universities across India. And Shakespeare's birthday was just yesterday, so no better day to have the talk.
Yeah,
so,
indeed.
Let me formally introduce Dr. Zaharia. Dr. Oana-Alis Zaharia is lecturer of English at the English Department of the University of Bucharest. Her principal research interests are Shakespeare studies, early modern studies, 16th century political thought in Europe with a focus on the English, Italian, and French spaces, translation studies, early modern translations, Romanian translations of Shakespeare's plays, Shakespeare and adaptation studies. That's quite something. And also, she is the author of the monograph, Cultural Reworkings and Translations in and of Shakespeare's Plays, which was published from Bucharest in 2015. Her recent work has been published in prestigious international journals, Ayer's Elizabethans, SEDERI Yearbook, Studia Literaria Universitatis Iagielloniensis, etc. She has edited and contributed to several volumes on Shakespeare, translation and adaptation, perspectives on Shakespeare in Europe's borderlands, co-editor. She was the co-editor of this journal, which was published from Bucharest in 2020. Shakespeare 400 in Romania. In Romania, papers commemorating the 400th anniversary of William Shakespeare's death. She was a co-editor in that too, which was published in 2017 from Bucharest. Shakespeare, Translation and the European Dimension. She was a co-editor in this in 2012. And Inhospitable Translations, Fidelities, Betrayals, Rewritings, published from Bucharest in 2010. She has been a member of several national research projects, IDEI PN3, Shakespeare in the Borderland, which was from 2017 to 2019, which you can find in her blog, Shakespeare in the Borderland, wordpress.com. IDEI UB X Shakespeare, Recuperaria Digitala, I'm sorry.
This is the Romanian title of the project, is the recuperation of the digital.
Romanesti. This project ran from 2012 to 2013. And then IDEI PN2, the European Dimension of Shakespeare's Plays, which ran from 2008 to 2011. IDEI UB, Traduceri ne Italieri Shakespeare Adaptat, which was in 2008. With this, we welcome the eminent Shakespearean scholar to give her seminar today. We are highly obliged to you, Madam. Berhampur University welcomes you.
Hello everyone. Thank you so very much for your attendance today in such large number. I feel really honored to be here in this virtual amphitheater. Special thanks to Dr. Shruti Das for inviting me to give this talk on Shakespeare's Hamlet. What I have in mind for today is to have a conversation with you rather than a traditional lecture, or at least a combination of the two. Therefore, I'm really counting on your active participation. I would appreciate if some of you could keep your cameras on so that I can see you while we interact. And I do hope that we're going to have a fruitful discussion today about Shakespeare and the issue of adaptation. In terms of the structure of this presentation, I would like us first to discuss the concept of adaptation from a more theoretical point of view. Then we'll have a look at the specificities of film language, just the basics of it. And for the second part, I thought that we could explore together scene 1 from Act 3 in Hamlet, one of the most famous scenes in Hamlet, of course, which includes, as we know, the extremely popular "To Be or Not to Be" soliloquy, as well as what we call the nunnery scene. The encounter between Hamlet and Ophelia and their sort of confrontation. Finally, we'll watch and comment together on the way in which this particular scene has been translated into film, into movie. And I'm going to show you clips from 2 very popular Hamlet movies, Laurence Olivier's 1948 film and Kenneth Branagh's 1996 production. I suppose that some of you may already be familiar with them. I'm going to share the screen now so that you can, I have a PowerPoint in here. Okay, and I hope that you can see it now. Is it large enough?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, it's visible.
Razia? Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's large enough.
Okay. I've told you that I would like this to be a dialogue. Therefore, I'm going to start with a question. And because I won't be able to talk to all of you, I have generated a link that I'm going to place in your chat. You simply have to click on it and type in, please, 3 words, 3 ideas, 3 concepts or examples of adaptation. What do you understand by adaptation? And if we can enlarge this broad question, what is an adaptation? How would we define it? Do you associate Shakespeare's plays with the idea of adaptation? And if yes, what different types of media come up to your mind when you think of Shakespeare adaptation?
Ma'am,
yes.
The audio is not so much audible. Your voice is not so much audible.
Okay.
No, it's absolutely clear.
Is it clear?
But some breakings are there.
I'm afraid that might be the internet connection.
Yeah, it must be their internet connection because it's very, very clear here. Don't worry. Please go on. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay. So if you go to that link, we will create a word cloud, which I'm going to share it with you. But maybe somebody can join in and tell me what's your opinion? What do you understand by adaptation when we use this term? What do you think of? Or Shakespearean adaptation? I'll go immediately to the cloud. Could you follow the link in the chat? Is it there? Oh, okay, one moment, please, because there is a problem with, I think I have to send it to Deepishka, and maybe you can share it, please, because if I'm no longer the host, they won't let me.
I got it.
You've got it? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyone who could come up with some examples of adaptations?
We have had some adaptations of Hamlet in Hindi. We have a movie called Haider. So,
Right.
and Othello, we have Onkara. And also, they have, their adaptations in different languages when they translate that and put it into another kind of medium. The play is...
Also in Malayalam, we have Shakespeare adaptations.
What about other media than the film?
So please click on the chat box. You find in the chat box, Deepshika Rautray has sent a link. Please click on the link. Dr. Zaharia wants you to click on the link.
Click on the link and just submit 3 words. You will see that I really like this online tool. I've just discovered it while working on Zoom with my students. And if you do that, we are going to have a sort of brainstorming here and see what are the cultural products that we think of when we think of adaptation. Let me see if it works. If not, I'll go back to it maybe a bit.
It's not interactive.
Yeah, I see that somebody has typed in the title of a movie. Okay, we go on with the discussion, and please feel free to type in as I speak. Yeah, we don't need to stop. You know that adaptation and the problem with of adaptation has been the focus of many recent critical books. One of the most significant ones, seminal one, I would say, is Linda Hutchins' A Theory of Adaptation. She's one of the first scholars, adaptation scholars, to focus and who tried to provide a theory of adaptation. You have a quote on your screens from her book. She says, adaptation is everywhere nowadays, on television, radio, and movie screen, on the musical and dramatic stage, on the internet, in novels and comic books, in graphic novels and manga, on our iPads, on YouTube, on fan fiction sites, in your nearest theme park and video arcade. So what adaptation scholars have been trying to emphasize is that actually wherever we look nowadays, we are surrounded by all sorts of adapted works or products, as we see, is not only film that we speak of when we speak of adaptation. There are so many different media, particularly in this age of transmedia, that we can analyze and think of when we think of Shakespeare adaptation in our case, but of course that novels have also been adapted and so on. Another point that has been emphasized is the idea, and I've quoted Julie Sanders, another popular and well-known adaptation critic. She says, as readers and critics, we need to recognize that adaptation and appropriation are fundamental to the practice and indeed to the enjoyment of literature, unquote. So the emphasis on this, that these critics, or what these critics try to point to, is that although omnipresent, as we could see, yeah, adaptations are everywhere, they have been traditionally considered secondary and inferior to the adapted text, or the original, the source text, as we call it. Adaptations are seen, have been seen for a long time, minor, subsidiary, and never as good as the original, the revered original. Therefore, in recent years, adaptations have been upgraded, if you want to. After this long time of interpreting them as the Cinderella, as some critics call them, of literary studies, they have come to the fore. And they have been upgraded to a more fair position, I would say, that highlights their importance in the survival and the afterlife of what we call the original work. Nowadays, we are aware that this idea of the original and the view of literature as the end product of an individual's creative genius, who lives retired and detached from the entire world in his or her ivory tower, has been a cultural construct in itself, a cultural byproduct of a very specific period, that is the Romantic era, the end of the 18th century. This view of literature and of the original work goes hand in hand with the fidelity approach or criticism to adaptations or translations, which basically means that we evaluate an adaptation in terms of its fidelity or proximity to the adapted text. This view of adaptation, although still prominent, is nowadays, or in recent years, has been considered outdated. One moment, let me go on to the next slide. Okay. And this new trend of focusing not so much on the original as a single detached entity, but moreover on the idea of rewriting and reworking, has started, of course, with post-structuralist writers in the second half of the 20th century. And of course, we all think of, I don't know, Julia Kristeva, Jacques Derrida, Roland Barthes. All of them changed this discourse and focused on the idea of intertextuality. Intertextuality basically meaning the idea that all narratives, all stories are part of an endless process of rewriting, reworking, of mutation with no clear point of origin. According to Jacques Derrida, recontextualization, he says, is the inescapable condition of all texts in history. Therefore, every act of writing, every act of meaning loses its original context, which cannot be entirely enclosed, and plays itself out in, he says, a potential infinity of new contexts, of new formats, I would add, if we think of the 21st century, in which, in these new contexts, the significance of the writing will inevitably be different again and again from what it was. And of course, if we think of our own cultures, the moment when we have a Romanian adaptation or an Indian film, or an Indian performance of Shakespeare. That changes, in a way, everything. We will go back to this idea, but I would like to point to one, if we turn to Shakespeare, to one important thing. On the one hand, Shakespeare himself was an adapter, and we are very much aware of it nowadays that most of his plays were reworkings of adaptations of earlier plays, of historical, of the chronicles, of Italian novellas, and so on. What he did was rework all this interesting material and turn it into something different. And this is very much related to the Renaissance idea of imitation, which was not considered or not perceived as we do nowadays under the influence of that romantic view I was mentioning earlier. Imitation was not something servile. On the contrary, you looked at the greats of the antiquity, yeah, learned from them, and then you came up with something new, yeah, something. So it was, if you want to, a way of recognizing their authority, yeah, and acknowledging their authority. So that would be one important role. This, on the other hand, yeah, so Shakespeare was an adapter himself. Shakespearean adaptations and translations of his plays have been seminal in the shaping, in the fashioning of Shakespeare for different and various cultures throughout the centuries. And therefore, in this role, Shakespeare is a catalyst, a cultural catalyst. In many, I give the examples that we have in here, in many East European countries, Shakespearean translations in the 19th century have been seminal for the standardization of the language, for the creation of an original literature, and so on. And I know that that was the case in many other cultures and literary traditions. Therefore, adaptations and translations have been essential in the unfolding of this ongoing process that has turned Shakespeare into the global icon that it has become. Okay, I'll have a look a bit at the word cloud. I see that people have typed in their answers, and I'm going to stop the share and move a bit to the word cloud, and you'll see how nice that is. It's a sort of, as I've told you, an online brainstorming. I really like to use this with my students as well. There it is. Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay, thank you, Razia. The idea of, let's have a look what, sorry. Oh, it's already the end of the presentation. I have to play it once again. Okay. So the idea of this word cloud is that in there you can see everything you've typed in. Yeah, those are the words you have associated with adaptation, Hamlet, entertainment, stage play, TV or film, stage played very well. A new view with a change. I like this, right? Yeah, adaptation is a new view, is an act of, we'll discuss about this immediately, an act of creation, accommodation, reflecting, copying. Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. You will get this on your emails if you've typed them in, or I will be able to send you the word cloud when it's done. Okay, one moment, please. I want to go back now to to the PowerPoint. Okay. So if we could sum up a bit whatever I've been briefly presenting about this a very interesting concept of adaptation. Number one, the criteria of success of an adaptation today in the age of transmedia is no longer understood in relation to its proximity to any original, for none may exist. And we'll discuss the Hamlet case, so to say, right away. The success of an adaptation is considered in terms of its popularity, its persistence, and its dissemination. Adaptation, therefore, is not only a formal entity, a derivative product, but also a creative process. The act of adaptation, of adapting, is a creative process, a work of cultural reworking. In Yvonne Grieg's words, she says, I quote, "A story is an ongoing rebirth within other communication platforms, other political and cultural contexts." In other words, just like with any other cultural product, neither the product nor the process of adaptation can ever exist in a vacuum. They all have a context, a when, a where, a time and a place, a society and a culture that leave their imprint on that particular cultural product. I was saying that I'm going to turn to Hamlet to exemplify in a way the very problematic issue of establishing an original. Can we speak of Hamlet's original? Can we think of a definitive Hamlet text? That's very difficult. If I've gone for the, I've chosen only 4 texts that we can think of as being the original, there is evidence that the tale of Hamlet had already been adapted at least once before Shakespeare for the London stage, probably by Thomas Kyd, the author of the Spanish tragedy, in a play which was performed successfully in the 1590s. This is, in criticism, we call it the Ur-Hamlet. The play, unfortunately, is lost. Therefore, we only have evidence of it from the from Renaissance mentioning of the play. Then, number 2, in 1603, Shakespeare's Hamlet was published in an unauthorized version immediately after the first performances, in a sort of pirate edition, which we now call the first quarto or the bad quarto. Then the following year, in 1604, Shakespeare's own company, the King's Men, published their own version of Hamlet, and they wrote in there on the first, on the title page, newly imprinted and enlarged to almost as much again as it was, according to the true and perfect copy, unquote. Yeah, so we have another original, if you want to. And finally, in 1623, we have the text of Hamlet as published in the first folio, The Complete Works of Shakespeare. And this is, once again, another version of Hamlet. Therefore, you see, it's very difficult to say which of the Hamlet we refer to when we want to go for an original. I've told you that I'm going to speak very briefly about, let me change, just a few elements about film language. Like any other cultural products, film films have a language of their own. And it is important to know the basics of it when we want to analyze a movie, particularly a film based on a novel or on a play, as in our case. Film derives from silent movies, as we all know, and therefore it relies more on image than on the spoken word, than on sound. Words in film are subordinated to what we see. And in relation to this, we have to be aware that pictures and images have their own grammar, their own logic, and we have to learn to read them, to decode their meaning. And a few elements that I find important to be aware of when we watch a movie and when we explore it, when we want to write about it or comment on it. The basics of film language would include some of the following. First of all, the cinematography or the camera work, right? The camera movements and angles are extremely important because the direction of the camera can change our point of view. If looking down on a character, when filmed from the top, it can suggest an air of vulnerability or smallness in that particular character. If looking upwards, it suggests the idea of power and of privilege. The camera can zoom in on an area or zoom out of it. It can look down from overhead and offer a bird's eye view. And we will see that in the clips that I'm going to show you next from in both Olivier and in Proana. We have different sort of camera movements and angles being used. Therefore, such movements invite us to look in particular directions. They reveal narrative points or try to generate a particular reaction in the audience, of surprise, of disgust, of suspense, whatever the director or the actor may intend within the audience. They can help us, help or prevent us from identifying with a particular character in the movie. Most of the time, the camera will be mounted on some kind of steady support, and that's what we call a steady camera. But there is also the handheld camera, which is used for to draw attention to particular dynamic events, and it generally creates a sense of immediacy, of dynamism. In contrast to the jerky, shaky movements of the handheld camera, and Franco Zeffirelli uses a lot of this in his Shakespearean adaptations. If you look at Romeo and Juliet, for instance, the brawl scene is filmed with a handheld camera. By opposition, the Steadicam offers a fluid movement. You have one long shot. Other important elements, the mise en scène, right, as the French call it, which includes the visual elements on the screen, the setting, the lighting, any sort of symbols or motifs present in the movie. Costumes and makeup, of course, and we can discuss a bit, for instance, Ophelia's dress in Olivier's. What does it symbolize? Why did they choose that particular dress? Music and sound, the score of a film is also extremely important because it generally emphasizes particular emotions, particular themes in the movie. That would be it. I don't want to insist too much on these elements because I'm very eager to get to discussing and watching the clips and see. I'm really eager to see your opinion on these movies. If we go to the Hamlet text first, I generally do that because I think it's important to be aware of how things change. Yeah, we've said that adaptations are new products, and therefore we'll see in a way it is Hamlet, but when we watch the movies, but there is something different at the same time. Hamlet is an ongoing cultural narrative. Yeah? Nobody asks what is the Hamlet story nowadays, but how is it told? Yeah? Whenever we see a new performance, a new movie, we are eager to find out what's new, what's been handled differently from previous movies or previous performances of it. Each film engages differently with the narrative. They may find a specific place or a different point in time than the previous ones. I know that Dr. Shruti Das, she told me that you've already, I suppose you've all read the play, and that you have focused on this scene that I would like us to consider today. I'll share immediately. Okay, this is, I will skip the very beginning of the scene, but as you remember, there is that dialogue between Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, and Claudius. Yeah, and when they exit, we see Hamlet, and we have the soliloquy. Now, I would be very happy. Would be very happy if someone would tell us, who would like us to tell us, which is the famous dilemma that Hamlet expresses in this monologue. To be or not to be, that is the question. Which is the question?
To live or to die.
Right, very Sakin is it, yeah? Very shortly put, indeed. It is to live or to die, yeah? Which would be, and he says it there, if we look at the text, yeah, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, that is the suffering of life, the misfortune of life. Which way is it better? To endure it in a sort of stoic exercise, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them? So is it better to take arms, to confront this sea of troubles, the way Hamlet at this stage in the play sees the world around him and his life, and by opposing end them how?
With willpower.
Sorry, can you repeat, Sakin?
With willpower.
Right, but putting an end to one's life. Yeah, this is the alternative that he sees. To die, to sleep no more, and by sleep to say we end the heartache and 1,000 natural shocks, the diseases, that is, yeah, generally this is what we assume, that flesh, that the body, our mortal body, is heir to. Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. This is something that anyone would go for, right? And we have this very famous metaphor, yeah, death and the sleep of death. Yeah, death is like a sleep.
Yeah.
However, as he moves on with his reflection, he becomes aware that to die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Well, there's the rub. There's the rub. There's the problem. Why? For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, this mortal body, must give us pause. Yeah, the dreams that we may encounter in the sleep of death stop us from doing it, from committing this act, which otherwise could be perceived as a liberation from all the suffering, and we will have an entire list of what people bear in this world. And there it is. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. That's why we bear what? The whips and scorns of time, yeah? The oppressor's wrong whenever you are under somebody's power, the proud man's contumely, the proud man's that is contempt, yeah? Okay, the pangs of despised love, the suffering caused by unrequited love, or the love's delay. We have, I suppose, all the wrongs that we can think of in this very brief passage of Hamlet's monologue. The insolence of office, the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when a worthy person is under the control of unworthy ones. And of course, here we cannot have thinking of Claudius and Hamlet. But as with most of Shakespeare's plays, the text has a universal ring to it. It is very contextual, but at the same time, we can all relate to it in one way or another. We've been there, or I hope not in all those situations, but in certain situations, we've already been, and we know what it feels. So he goes back to his initial question: why? Why would a person, a man, a woman, why would we bear all these ills, all this suffering, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Bodkin means, you know the term, right? Well, the sort of Renaissance knife. Could fathers bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all. So which is the main obstacle that prevents us from choosing what in Hamlet's view would be a way out of this difficult, the sea of troubles? What is it that make us endure and bear suffering, diseases, injustice?
Ma'am.
Sorry?
Ma'am, the fear of what we may experience after death.
Right. The fear of the unknown, that is. Yeah? It seems that when he says the dread of something after the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, does Hamlet in here forget about somebody?
Ma'am?
Yeah?
Can you please ask the question once again?
Sure. When he says the undiscovered, so we are afraid of the undiscovered, of something after death, of what may come after death. That is, he says, death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne, from where no traveler returns. And my question was, does Hamlet forget about an important character in the play when he says that no traveler returns from the afterlife?
It's his father, the dead king.
Father.
Yeah.
Right, the ghost, yeah, this is a bit of an irony, yeah, he forgets that the ghost of his own father, the one who set into motion the entire play, has actually returned, yeah, and not only returned, but he delivered a very important message. Okay, conscience, therefore, and conscience understood in terms of the right and wrong, right? The sort of Christian morality that was in place back then. This is what makes us rather bears those ills we have. We prefer the ills that we are familiar with than fly to others that we know not of. And of course, he goes back to his own issue, the issue of taking action against Claudius. And he says, that it's in this way that enterprises of great pitch and moment with this regard their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. And there comes Ophelia, fair Ophelia. And I'd be very grateful if two of you would volunteer, and somebody could read Ophelia's part and somebody else could read Hamlet. And I would like us to go quickly through this nunnery scene, as we call it, before we watch it on movie, because there's an important change of perspective when we see the movie. So who would like to read Ophelia's part?
I'll read.
Razia, okay, yes. Thank you. And do we have a Hamlet in here?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to fix it. Okay, where Ophelia starts.
So Razia, please go ahead. You wanted to really read this portion? Please go ahead.
Helmet as well?
From Ophelia, good my lord.
Okay. How does your honor for this many a day? The whole part?
I humbly thank you. Well, so read it, the next.
My lord, I have remembers of yours that I have long to redeliver. I pray you now receive them.
No, not I. I never gave you art.
My honored lord, you know right well you did, and with them words of so sweet breed composed as made things more rich. Their perfume lost. Take this again for the noble mind, rich gives wax poor, when givers prove unkind, dear my lord.
Thank you.
Okay, and as you read, yeah, Shruti, is it okay if we go on with it? With reading it?
Pardon me?
Is it okay if we go on with reading it? Can you all hear it clearly?
I think
or should I
can.
sum it up? Would it be better if I sum it up?
Yeah, that would be better. Thank you.
Okay, so as you know, Hamlet's reaction, and you may read it by yourselves, the dialogue, just to remember it before we watch the films. He turns to from what would seem an encounter between two lovers, all of a sudden he changes. We know that he has put that antic disposition on, that he pretends to be mad, but there are moments in the play when we can really assume that he has gone mad, and this particular scene with Ophelia is generally considered to be such a point in the play. He changes his attitude all of a sudden. Are you honest? and she doesn't understand. Yeah, my lord, are you fair? What means your lordship? That if you be honest and fair, should admit no discourse to your beauty. And then he goes on to...
But beauty, my lord, better commerce done with honesty. So I was just reading the...
Thank you. Indeed, and he says,
we have, excuse me, we have, I think, Professor Panda here with us, and he used to be, I mean, you know, he's just superannuated from our department, and he is a dramatist. So I don't know if he's there, yeah. And he, I mean, if he could read out Hamlet, and that would be nice.
Right, it would be great. Thank you for the suggestion, Shruti.
Yeah, that would be very nice. He's got a wonderful voice when he kind of, you know, modulates it. So I don't know if he's right there. Professor Panda, can you hear me? I mean, I can't see anybody here. Hello? Professor Panda, can you hear me?
He was there.
He was there.
Hello.
Yeah, he's there.
Hello.
Yeah, Professor Panda, good afternoon. Could you please read
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me too?
Yeah, absolutely. So can you read these things, please? Read the dialogues, please.
Well,
I think this is where we've stopped.
I don't get them on my screen. Get them on my screen.
Oh, what is?
Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Hey, truly, for the power of beauty will soon transform from what it is to a born. Then the course of honesty can translate beauty into his likeness. This was some.
Oh, unfortunately, I think there's something wrong with Shruti, I think there was something wrong with the connection. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but something is wrong with his connection.
Okay. I'll read the passage that I'm most interested in, and then I'll show you the movie so that we can move on.
Yeah, I just got disconnected.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah, there was a problem with the.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Hello.
Yes.
We can hear you clearly now.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's
sorry,
okay.
everyone.
We can hear you clearly now.
Hear me because of,
if you could just read this, if you could just read "Get thee to a nunnery," we would be happy, right?
No problem. Go ahead.
All right. So, Alice, you can read it.
Okay. Get thee to a nunnery. Why would thou be a breeder of sinners? I am myself indifferent honest, but yet I could accuse you of such things that it were better my mother had not borne me. I am very proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offenses at my back that I have thoughts to put them in, imagination to give them shape or time to act them in. What should such fellows as I do prowling between earth and heaven? We are arrant knaves, believe none of us. Go thy ways to a nunnery. Where's your father? At home, my lord. Let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. Farewell. Oh, help him, you sweet heavens. If thou dost marry, I'll give thee this plague for thy dowry. Be thou as chaste as ice, as pure as snow, thou shalt not escape calumny. Get thee to a nunnery, farewell. Or if thou wilt need marry a fool, for wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. To a nunnery, go, and quickly too. And he goes on with this, very almost destructive for Ophelia, discourse. He changes, from I loved you once, but you shouldn't have believed me. And I would say that why do you think Hamlet is so angry? What does he change his attitude to Ophelia? From what we see in the text.
This was the question that my students wanted to ask you. And they also wanted to ask you another question, that why is Hamlet so angry when, and I mean, you know, when a lady makes up, right? I mean, makes up, I mean, paints her face and things like that, uses cosmetics. Like. And then why is he saying that Mary a fool? Why does he tell her that? Because he's supposed to be loving her.
Right. Well,
So,
yes, thank you, Shruti, and I like very much your questions. They go in the direction that I had in mind. If we read the text only, you will see that the directors of the films have found their own explanations to why Hamlet, and in a way they managed to make him, I would say, more make us understand better why. But if we refer to the text only, we know that Hamlet has been betrayed, or this is what he feels like, by his mother, right? When forgetting so quickly about his father, the old king Hamlet, and remarrying Claudius, whom he perceives as the very opposite of all the qualities that his father embodied. And you remember that famous, the first monologue, yeah? When he draws that comparison between the two brothers. Claudius is a satyr, yeah? He cannot understand how his own mother and the depiction of his mother and his father as a couple was an idealized one. They were the perfect pair for him before old King Hamlet died. Therefore, there was one very, I would say, like an earthquake in Hamlet's life the moment he gets back to Elsinore and sees Claudius on the throne, a new king, his father gone for only 2 months, and his mother has already remarried. In this scene, to go back to it, if you remember the famous, in that first monologue, he also has that famous line, frailty, thy name is woman. And critics have assumed that from that point on, Hamlet equates all women with his mother, with the behavior and the betrayal of his mother. Betrayal on the one hand of his dead father, and betrayal of him as her son. In this particular scene, people have assumed, and you will see that both directors, both Laurence Olivier and Kenneth Branagh, show Hamlet being or suspecting that there is somebody else in the room there, hidden. It's not only Ophelia and him, which is the case, right? We know that Claudius and Polonius are hidden behind the arras, behind the hedges. And
Polonius behind the arras.
Right. Yep. And there is this idea, although it's not expressed in the text, that Hamlet becomes aware. There is a noise or something that makes him aware that there is someone else in the room. Of course, that everyone knows that Polonius is the main spy at the court of Elsinore, and that's why he asks her all of a sudden, "Where's your father?" Yeah, like out of the blue, it would seem to us. And the problem with the paintings and the makeup, yeah, because you've asked that specific question, he equates that with women's trying to fool men, to make them love something that they are not. And once again, yeah, and you see there, God's creature, you nickname God's creatures and make your wantonness your ignorance. We always have to keep in mind Gertrude, yeah, his mother. and the feelings that he has for her, and this utter feeling of betrayal, which now he sees Ophelia doing as well. He feels that the only person that he could trust in this world, Ophelia, she was the only one left in this corrupted court of Elsinore, ruled by Claudius, the murderer of his father. The only white dove, as we say it, has betrayed him as well. Okay, I'll stop here and play the first clip from Laurence Olivier's movie. Shruti, I would really appreciate if you could tell me if you can hear it well when I play it, and if
right, I will.
If the image is good enough. Okay, so I'll stop this first. Okay, 1 moment, please. Just two words about Laurence Olivier and his movie, because I don't know if people are familiar with it. You have it in here as well. I'm going to share this PowerPoint with you, and Shruti, if you can share it to everyone after the meeting, that would be great, so that people can come back to things we've mentioned in the lecture.
We will be recording it and putting it on YouTube.
Yeah, that could work as well. We'll speak about it at the end of the session. So the year is 1948. Yeah, right after, this is a post-World War II production. Laurence Olivier was both the director and he was also playing the leading part, the role of the part of Hamlet. This was the first very popular movie based on Hamlet and one of Shakespeare's plays, and it has remained to this date the most influential for the films that have been produced afterwards. It won 2 Academy Awards for Best Picture and Best Actor, which was quite an accomplishment for a Shakespeare movie. What's interesting is that Olivier called his film an essay on Hamlet, and the perspective that he explores in this film is the psychoanalytical reading of Hamlet, which was very popular at the time, the Freud-Jones thesis, which focuses on the Oedipus complex in Hamlet. And there are moments in the play where this is very obvious. The focus is on Hamlet. He's the focus of the film. The Elsinore that you see in here is, you will see immediately, a dark place, there's a Gothic atmosphere with huge rooms and winding staircases, dark corridors. This is a medieval castle, very opposed to what we'll see next in Kenneth Branagh's adaptation. Okay. You have several posters in here, which I think this is can be a nice way to analyze. Yeah, I've selected more of them. Depending on the country in which the film was shown, they chose another image from the film, and they focused on something different. We won't have time, unfortunately, to discuss them, but they are really interesting. Okay, while watching the movie, I would like you to keep in mind or to think about these questions that I have. We won't have the time to discuss all of them, but please consider the setting. Where does the action take place? How do certain elements of the setting reflect the leading character's emotions? What impact does the setting have on us? Costumes are also interesting. and of course, the relationship between Ophelia and Hamlet, how is it represented in this film? Do they seem close to one another? Do they seem in love? Are they in love? This is one of the big questions. Does Hamlet actually love Ophelia or not? Focus, please, on their reactions, on their attitudes, glances. What about Polonius and Claudius? How do they treat Ophelia? What would that tell us about her role, her place in this society? And you will see that Olivier chose to shift the place of the to be or not to be monologue, and instead of starting with it, he places after the dialogue between Hamlet and Ophelia. And of course, we should ask ourselves, does this change, alter in any way the meaning of Hamlet's monologue? Do we perceive it differently? And then, of course, you see the monologue. So please try to, maybe you can take some notes while you are watching so that we can discuss it afterwards. Okay, I'll move to the... no, sorry, I have to open it first on my screen now. Please bear with me until I go through these technical settings. Okay, it should now work. I hope you can also hear it. Shruti, is it okay?
Yeah, but
Read on this book. That sure such an exercise may color your loneliness. Gracious, so please you, we'll bestow ourselves. Ophelia, walk you here. Let's withdraw, my lord.
Soft you now, the fair Ophelia. Nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered.
Good my lord. How does your honor for this many a day?
I humbly thank you. Well, well, well.
my lord, I have remembrances of yours that I have longed long to redeliver. I pray you now receive them.
No, not I. I never gave you aught.
My honoured lord, you know right well you did. And with them words of so sweet breath composed as made the things more rich. Their perfume lost, take these again. For to the noble mind rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. There, my lord.
Are you honest?
My lord.
I did love you once.
Indeed, my lord, you made me believe so.
You should not have believed me. Get thee to a nunnery. Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? I am myself indifferent honest, but yet I could accuse me of such things that it were better my mother had not borne me. I am very proud, revengeful, ambitious. More offenses at my beck than I have thoughts to put them in, imagination to give them shape or time to act them in. What should such fellows as I do, crawling between heaven and earth? We are errant knaves all, believe none of us. Go thy ways to a nunnery. Where's your father?
At home, my lord.
Let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. Farewell!
Oh, help me, you sweet heaven.
I have heard of your paintings too well enough. God hath given you one face and you make yourselves another. You jig, you amble, you lisp, you nickname gods, creatures, and make your wantonness your ignorance. Get thee to a nunnery, and quickly too. Farewell! Or if thou wilt needs marry a fool, for wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. Go to, I know more of it!
It hath made me mad.
I say we will have no more marriages. Those that are married already, all but one, shall live. The rest shall stay as they are.
To a nunnery. Go.
Love, his affections do not that way tend. Nor what he spake, though it lacked form a little, was not like madness. There's something in his soul, o'er which his melancholy sits on brood. And I do fear the unheeded consequence will be some danger, which to prevent I have in quick determination thus set it down. He shall with speed to England. Haply the seas and countries different with variable objects shall expel this something settled matter in his heart. What think you on't?
It shall do well, but yet I do believe the origin and commencement of his grief sprung from neglected love. How now, Ophelia? You need not tell us what Lord Hamlet said. We heard. My lord, do as you please.
It shall be so. Madness in great ones must not unwatched go.
not to be? That is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. To die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep, to sleep. A chance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delays, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Who would fardels bear, to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have, than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience doth make cowards of us all. And thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought. And enterprises of great pith and moment, with this regard their currents turn awry, and lose the name of action.
Okay. I hope it went well. I hope you could hear it clearly and watch it. Was it Shruti? Was it fine?
Good, thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to share the questions that I'd like us to think of. And I'd very much like to hear you now. What was your impression? Let's go to the first scene, the nunnery scene, yeah? Could you understand better Hamlet's reaction to Ophelia when you saw the movie than when you simply read the text of the play?
Yeah, ma'am.
Why do you think that is, Sakin? Why do we understand Hamlet better and his motivation and his attitude? What is it that's the...
Actually, Hamlet deeply loves Ophelia.
Mm-hmm.
But he can't express it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why he can't do that is because he has a name. He has a mission. to kill his uncle. And if he lets Ophelia be, if he lets Ophelia stand in front of him, it will be an emotional trauma for him to finally do that. As we know, love is sometimes a weakness.
Right.
As well as a strength to all.
What about the way in which Ophelia acts? How does she seem? Are there any clues in her behavior, in her attitude that could tell Hamlet?
I thought so, because it was like when the students and when anyone who reads the text, sometimes we wonder that all of a sudden or out of the blue, Hamlet behaves like this, and so behaves in such a rude manner towards Ophelia.
Right.
But the movie showed us that he has reason enough to behave, because Ophelia is conscious of her father and the king hiding behind the arras. And that is why, her eyes are shifting, and she holds the book, and she is like, conscious. She's looking if Hamlet's come or if he hasn't come, and then she's looking at the book a little bit, and her eyes are constantly shifting. Her behavior makes him suspicious.
Yes, indeed, yeah, and we can see that in the beginning he sees her looking at the curtain, but he doesn't seem to be sure, and they still talk as if there were no one around. But then when she keeps looking towards the arras, at one moment there is this very, I would say, clear theatrical behavior in a way in him, that we can see that at one point he no longer actually addresses Ophelia, but Claudius and Polonius, or the persons that he suspects they meet.
The dialogue of Ophelia in this particular scene was like, as if she jumped up to say something. And the first dialogue, it was not very natural. It was as if she was startled into saying something, or she's jumping up to say something for some audience, like she has to say this kind of a thing. And it was so obvious. And so naturally, Hamlet was angry. But then, again, when we look at his emotions, though he is very rude to her, he kisses that lock of hair, which she doesn't.
Which she doesn't see, and this is a gesture that shows to us in a way his feelings, in spite of whatever he said, in spite of how cruelly, in a way, he has treated her. There is love there, and I think that this is what Olivier wanted to suggest, indeed, by
yes, and very clear when you read the text. Sometimes we are always confused with this kind of behavior, and how does somebody love somebody if they are so rude and cruel?
Right.
But here, little gesture shows us how much he loves her, in spite of the fact. And I saw, or everybody must have noticed that he had his back towards the arras. So even those people couldn't see him kissing the lock of hair.
Right, it's a very private gesture, very intimate gesture that in a way he chooses to do while keeping, in a way, indeed, as you say, the whoever is after the curtain away from it. What I would have liked to add, Shruti, is that you kept making, and this is something that I also do, this. That's why I wanted to read the text with you first. This idea, I think it shows to us that the importance of performance. Shakespeare's plays were meant to be performed first and foremost. And the moment we see it performed, whether it's in the theater or in a movie, the entire text gets alive, so to say. And indeed, all of these misunderstandings or all of these cruxes that we cannot explain. Why does he suddenly ask about her father? Or why does he suddenly start behaving so rude and cruel? Why is he so? The moment you see it performed, everything changes. And that's why I always encourage my students to watch. It doesn't matter whether it is a film, particularly now during the pandemic, they couldn't go to the theater. But films, I would say, are a very, very good addition to theatrical plays. Anyone else who would like to come up with their own comments? How did you find that transition from Ophelia to the upper part of the castle? How did you find Olivier's idea of portraying the to be or not to be monologue? Because this is always a surprise, so to say. What have you thought of that? What are your thoughts on that? Yes, Ram, yeah, Professor Narayan.
Yeah.
I don't think we can hear you, although your microphone seems to be unmuted.
Yes.
Right, now we can hear you very well.
Professor Oana, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Professor Oana, you can hear me. I just wanted to congratulate you for let me.
I'm afraid there are some interruptions.
Yeah, I think the network issues there.
Yeah, there's a problem with the internet. Sakin, would you like to add something? I've seen that you've unmuted your microphone.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes. Can you hear me, Professor Oana?
Yes.
I'm so sorry that my audio is... Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now, but there's been an interruption.
We can hear you. Please continue.
Hello?
Yeah,
yes.
Please continue. We can hear you. Please say something.
Hello?
We can hear you. Please say something.
You can...
Okay. So I think that the scene when Oliver has shifted, Oliver Lawrence has shifted it, the to be or not to be seen to the seashore, to a cliff, that just makes that whole soliloquy very poignant. And, it's like the philosophy, the sea raging, hitting on the cliffs, and a deep fall. So someone's contemplating death. That the scene brings that loud and clear. Had he been saying that inside a room or something, inside the castle room, it wouldn't have had that kind of an impact as it has when, you are about to commit suicide. And the two things, one is with a dagger, and the other thing is jumping off the cliff.
Right.
Into the rocks. So that, kind of gives you an expectancy of the horror that's going to happen. And it doesn't happen because, another small thing that happens there, the dagger slips from the hand of the protagonist or Hamlet, falls into the sea. So there, his decision not to die is very subtly expressed.
Right. And what I've also enjoyed was this idea that if you've seen the way in which the camera moves, like we enter his own head, his own brain. I thought that is brilliantly done, because soliloquies are, as we know, characters' inner thoughts. on stage, the actor has to pronounce them for the audience to hear, but in a movie you can play with the voiceover and with this image that I found so significant for showing us the Hamlet's thoughts. And as you've mentioned, this idea that there is the imminence of death is so close when we see him watching that roiling. I had to look at the chat. That the roiling sea at the bottom of the cliff. Okay. I will show you next Kenneth Branagh, so that we'll be able to discuss the two of them. Is that okay? If no one else would like to add anything, I wouldn't want to end the conversation if there are maybe other people who would like to.
Ma'am, I would like to.
Yes, Sakin, please do.
Ma'am, ma'am, we can observe the soliloquy, to be or not to be, adding Hamlet's emotions to Ophelia. Means here in the soliloquy, Hamlet asks the question to live or to die. In another way, we can view it as the question to love or to leave. Do I have to love Ophelia or to leave Ophelia?
Right.
Yes, because there is nothing like to be or not to be. We could interpret it as we please. We don't have to strictly stick to the thing. When you put it at the end, well, it is like, you're right, to be with Ophelia or to leave her, to send her to the nunnery. So it's a dilemma, to kill the king or not to kill the king.
Not to kill Claudius, yeah. I would say that actually he addresses all of these things. Yes. Because all of them overwhelm him in a way, all of these questions. It's not only Ophelia, but the fact that Olivier chooses to move the monologue after the nunnery scene makes it about Ophelia also as well, maybe more than in the text, where the to be or not to be monologue comes, as you've seen, before his encounter with Ophelia. And indeed, there are all of these issues. I would say this monologue in a way encompasses
context, the perspective. Oliver changes the perspective when he puts it at the end of this dialogue, the scene. So he just makes us think that, is it Ophelia he's talking about? That is what I think Sachin was asking us. That was interesting.
Right. Yes, I agree with you. I see that people have been answering and asking questions in the chat as well. I'm sorry I cannot do it in parallel and read it, but please write your answers in there, and I will be very happy to read them afterwards.
Because they're general questions that people would like you to answer. It's been plaguing them. So we'll take them at the end.
Yes, we'll take them at the end. I will.
Another question here related to this monologue by Bhagavan Tripathi. He says, why Hamlet doesn't use I in the monologue? Is it about the general state of being and non-being?
Well, I would say that I think I've mentioned it earlier. I think that this monologue is very personal to Hamlet, as you've just mentioned. Yeah, it can be about the issue of killing or not killing Claudius, of taking or not taking revenge. Is he entitled to do it? Is it moral? Is it acceptable from a religious point of view? You remember his questioning the provenance of the ghost. Is this ghost the devil, or is it a good spirit. So on the one hand, there are, even if he does not uses the first person singular, they are very much about him, but at the same time, they are very universal, very general.
Right.
We can all relate to them, and I think that it is about being and not being, but there are several layers to it. A religious one, a philosophical one, and a very mundane, if you want to, very world-related one. Yeah, particularly when he speaks about the world around us and the way in which he perceives it at this point in his life.
I would like to add another dimension here. Well, in India, we know that because, our language is a little different, maybe like the Romanian language, like the European languages.
Yes.
Here, the royalty do not call themselves I. They kind of, relate themselves, the singular to the universal, because whatever happens to the royalty happens to the people around. So it is a typical habit with Indian royals not to address themselves as me, like us. It's more like us, hum, not me, right? This is a Hindi word. So they do that. So maybe this could be an added perspective here.
Yes, we actually in Shakespeare's time, and I would say that in several European countries, in Romania included, we do use the same form, or kings and queens used the same form of we, of us, as you say. On the one hand, with the specifications that you've pointed to. On the other hand, if you remember that famous theory of the king's two bodies, where the king has the body mortal, but also the body that refers to the kingdom. The kingdom is the political body, the political and private body. Therefore, whenever they use the we, they refer, as you say, to all the people included in the in their kingdom, whose sovereign they are. Should we take a look at Kenneth Branagh's, and then we take some more questions at the end, Shruti?
Sure, that's great. Yeah.
Because I think it would be very nice to see them in contrast. You will see that Kenneth Branagh takes a completely different approach. This is obviously a more recent production, 1996. It is the only film that struggled or wanted to give a complete version of Hamlet. That's why it lasts for 4 hours. So it's a long film. The setting, as you'll see, has been rethought, replayed. The story is replaced in the 19th century, so no longer the medieval castle that we've seen in Olivier. And you see there's I will let you see the differences in terms of the setting. Some further questions that I would like you to consider while watching Branagh's adaptation. Does the representation on film of this particular scene, and we've discussed this question more or less, does it help us understand Hamlet's anger and fury better? How is the relationship, this is what I'm actually more interested in, how is the relationship between Hamlet and Ophelia reshaped, rethought in this film adaptation? And you can compare it to Olivier's version. And I don't know if we have enough time for the father and daughter relationship, but that's also something that I find interesting. Okay, so I will stop the share of the PowerPoint and play Branagh's, the clip from Brana's movie.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, Razia.
Ma'am, will you please share this PPT on my mail?
Sorry?
Will you please share this PPT which you were explaining today on my mail?
Should I put it in the chat so that everyone can open it on their own computers?
No, don't worry, because we will be putting it up in the YouTube for everybody to see whenever they want to. Don't worry at all. You can go to Berhampur University Department of English, YouTube.
I will send it to Shruti, and she will share it with everyone then.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. Let me. Oh, once again, I have to.
I have shared my mail on chat.
Yes, please do. One moment. There it is.
Joy to hear of it. They are.
Okay.
Ma'am, is there any way to contact you after the course?
You contact me, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give the email, don't worry. Just contact me, and after that,
sure.
Movie now.
Okay. Can I start? Shruti, just okay. Okay. What do you think of this different take on the same scene, right? The same dialogue. How would Yes.
Here Hamlet is being more aggressive, showing his animal nature.
What else? What else is different in the way in which the relationship between the two of them? Please think of the beginning of the scene first, before we get to his fury and anger. Was there something different in the way the relationship between Hamlet and Ophelia is portrayed in this movie?
Yeah, because when Hamlet comes and Ophelia enters, Ophelia is not there previously, right? Hamlet has delivered his soliloquy, his depression, he's very depressed, he looks in the mirror and he talks to himself. And then Ophelia comes in, he's very happy to see her, he hugs her. And then her body language makes him suspect that there is something amiss in the situation. And then he gets very angry.
Right. The moment that, as you've seen at one point, he hears a noise. So it's her attitude. And I would say that Kenneth Branagh portrays them as much more intimate. And this is something that he speaks about in one of his interviews. I have attached it in the bibliography to the PowerPoint. When you have the time, I do encourage you to watch this interview with Kenneth Branagh, where he speaks about the directorial choices that he made when filming the movie. And one of his desire, so to say, was to portray them as a more modern couple. So we can see that in the way they speak to each other in the beginning. There's an intimacy that I would say it's not so obvious in Olivier. And of course that the period is different. Yeah, we have 1948 versus 1996.
50 years. They were filmed 50 years apart.
Right. So another thing that I would like to draw your attention to is the fact that the moment of the production, as we've mentioned earlier in our talk, is extremely important. It influences the way in which the text is adapted, the way in which we interpret it. I would like to ask you, what do you make of all those mirrors? If you think of the entire play. I think that's one of the most interesting elements of the setting in Kenneth Branagh, leaving along aside the colors and the costumes. You've seen very lavish. This is a Baroque style, very vibrantly colored. But what about the mirrors? What do you think they symbolize?
Hello.
Yeah. Yes. Hello, Balabhadra.
Hello.
Hello.
I have got a different kind of opinion while making comparison between these two versions of the play in the cinema form. I think the previous one, the Oliver's version, I felt was more implied and more artistic in comparison to the second one, because many things which were to be said were implied to be said, and I think there was a different artistic way of presenting things in Oliver's version that was more touching than the second one.
Okay. Well, Olivier's film was very much influenced by the theatrical performance that Olivier had played a couple of years before shooting the movie, and maybe that's why it borrows a lot from the performance tradition on stage, and you have a different approach indeed to it. But what about this? I go back to the mirrors in Branagh. What's the point of them? Did you find them symbolic in any way for Hamlet's character, for the entire play?
The mirror, ma'am.
Yes.
The mirror symbolizes many phases of Hamlet. Many phases as a son, as a lover, as a prince, and as a human being.
Yes, very nice, Akin. Just like in Ophelia's description of him. And yes, I would say that this is one of the main interpretations that we can give to those mirrors. Yeah, the many facets of Hamlet's personality, which is so complex. There would be one more interpretation. And maybe you can think a bit of the political aspect of the play, which we haven't addressed here, but it is very poignant in Branagh's adaptation. What else would the mirrors symbolize? Any ideas?
Ma'am, the inner self.
Sorry?
It symbolizes Hamlet's inner self and the outer self also.
I think the mirror, the person in the room can see if someone else is hiding somewhere, these multiple reflections.
Good evening, ma'am.
Hello, Suganda. Sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing your names okay. Yeah, would you like? Yeah.
Maybe Kenneth Branagh has used the mirror as symbolism for confrontation of Hamlet to his real self, according to me.
Right.
So it could be. Yes,
yeah, that could be as well. What about the fact that behind that mirror, Claudius and Polonius are hiding?
Yeah, that's what I said, that it could be a political thing. And then, these rooms were so constructed and mirrors were put in such a way that if anybody was hiding somewhere, the person in the room, by looking at the mirrors, could possibly get an inkling to who was hiding where. And that is why, Hamlet goes on opening each and bashing to find out and pulling Ophelia from one place to the other, as if he is mad, but actually he was trying to find out where the person was hiding, the people, these two people were hiding.
Right. Yes, that's true, Shruti. And the political aspect is very obvious if you watch the entire movie. This is in Hamlet. The text itself is the court of Elsinore is like a panopticon, right? Everyone spies on everyone. Remember Polonius and Claudius, remember Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who spy on Hamlet and try to find out things from him. So yes, in a way, this
Polonius spying on Lytus, his son.
Right. So so many aspects that we can think of. Okay, should we take some more questions? I see that our time is almost up, and I wouldn't want to keep you for too long. I know that...
There are some student questions about the entire Hamlet play, not about this act. They would be very happy. They're shy students, so they would be very happy if you could take some questions. They're simple questions.
We will. I will. I'm taking a look at them, yeah, and I'll try to... I've seen one earlier about the foils of Hamlet. I don't know, I cannot find it any longer. But of course, when we speak of foils to Hamlet, the first that comes up to our mind is Laertes, and then Fortinbras. Both of them are, just like Hamlet, the sons of fathers who were killed and who want to take or have to take revenge. But like most literary foils, they are not exactly like Hamlet. They only mirror, they only reflect Hamlet's dilemma. Both Laertes and Fortinbras, I'd say, they are men of action. They do not remember Laertes' reaction when he sees Ophelia has gone mad, and when he hears about Polonius' death. He doesn't reflect. He doesn't have moral dilemmas. He just wants revenge right away. And he organizes that sort of rebellion that is barely, Claudius manages to put it off, but he is, as I was saying, similar, his situation is similar to Hamlet's, but at the same time we see Fortinbras as well, yeah? Different attitudes to, let's say, a very similar situation. I don't know who,
yeah. The question in foil, who are Hamlet's foils, and in what ways do the characters shed light in this, right? This is a question by...
That was the question, yeah.
As a student of masters, first year masters here. So who are Hamlet's foils, and in what way do their characters shed light?
I think I've answered. I hope I've managed to answer that question. Yeah, I think of if I think of the revenge theme in particular, I think Laertes and Fortinbras are his foils, with the differences that I've pointed to in terms of how...
Most of the, quite a few of the questions are mostly common. All of them want to know why Shakespeare treated women as he did. And then again, why does he make the ghost Hamlet, that is the father Hamlet, draw Hamlet to a corner of the stage and tell him to treat the mother gently?
Well,
characters are aggressive towards women, and Shakespeare projects himself as a misogynist.
Yeah, this is something that I've tried to answer earlier as well. Hamlet's attitude to women, or one possible answer, that there are so many of them. One possible answer to this question is that what he feels as his mother's betrayal, he projects it on all women. And Ophelia is also a victim of that. So his anger, his fury is directed not only at herself, but at all women in general. And if you look at the comments and what she says to her, at one point you are under the impression that actually she did not address her, but she speaks in general about all women. And that's why I would say that the point of origin is his mother's attitude, which he afterwards projects on all women around him. And of course, Ophelia is the closest to him. And the moment he feels betrayed by her as well, and I think that Kenneth Branagh does a wonderful role in it, when you see him, like, he cannot believe what he hears when she says, I have to return these gifts to you. And it's like, who are you? And then when he hears that noise and he realizes that actually that very beautiful private moment is not theirs, he feels, as I said earlier, betrayed by Ophelia as well. And I suppose this was one of the triggers of his anger. And I'm not trying to justify it in any way, but that could be one of them. Shruti, I don't remember the other question.
The other question was, when Shakespeare has said, treated women in this way, on the other hand,
there was one about the ghost.
The old King Hamlet draws young Hamlet to the corner of a stage and tells him to be kind to Gertrude.
Yes, well, the ghost is one of the most interesting characters, although in the play, although it appears for just a brief moment. I would say that this, you know, that the provenance of the ghost was really problematic. You had that Catholic versus Protestant tension in Elizabethan era. The Catholic believed in the purgatory, and ghosts who returned, like Hamlet's father's ghost, were thought of to come from the purgatory. With the Protestants, this belief changed, and for a Protestant believer, ghosts revenants, as they call them, could only be the devil. And I would say that the fact that the ghost requests revenge, and specifically on Claudius only, he asks Hamlet to take revenge and to leave his mother. This would show that there is no, if you want to, personal revenge in terms of the requests of the ghost. The ghost does not want to punish everyone. Gertrude could have been punished if his revenge was taken to be a very personal one. He asks Hamlet to revenge him and to remember him, right? You remember me, and take action against Claudius, but not against his mother. Remember that what he asks Hamlet is very problematic from a Christian perspective, right? Revenge was not accepted in Christian religion. This was a sin. Yeah. God was considered to be the only judge. And basically, the ghost asks Hamlet to kill someone, if we are to take it very bluntly. To ask him to kill his own mother would be too much in a way, from a moral point of view. Anyway, the request is problematic, because that would send Hamlet to, according to the Christian belief, killing anyone, no matter how justified you might be, meant sending your soul to hell. So,
well, this is very interesting because teaching Hamlet to an Indian classroom is very different, because majority of these students are from the Hindu religion, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not this Protestant and the understanding of Catholicism and Protestantism. So it used to be, I mean, you know, your explanation will definitely make the students understand this thing much better. So it clears a lot of things and they will look at it from this perspective, religious perspective. So you see, it's too difficult teaching all these things to some people, I mean, to a group of students or to a group of population who have no idea about the culture in the West.
I agree, Shruti.
Christianity. For us, Christianity is one kind of Christianity. Islam is one kind of Islam. And we have sectarianism in Hinduism. But this kind of a thing, you know, teaching it to a Hindu classroom is very different and very difficult. And your explanation makes things very, very clear. And, you know, I mean, it's very nice. Thank you so much.
Oh, I hope it did. It was very brief. I do recommend you Stephen Greenblatt's book, Hamlet in Purgatory, which is a wonderful book. And there you can have this, what I've put in a nutshell, you have it very nicely explained and explored.
There is a question here from Jasmita Kumar. As we know that intertextuality can take place through any medium or styles across cultures, but how the diabolical or extremely wicked language register borrowed from the intertext both elevate the statement which merely appears to be true in the text, Hamlet's madness, and from smaller form to larger, what is this?
Good.
Workability of the ghost.
I found it as well. I'm trying to get the gist of it because it's quite long.
Yeah. So she's basically asking about the diabolical and wicked language register.
Borrowed from the
Is this language intertextual, I guess?
Well, in Kenneth Branagh, but in Olivier as well, although he reshuffles the scene, the language is Shakespeare's. So what you see, what you hear in the movies is that Shakespeare's text, Shakespeare's lines, particularly in Branagh. Olivier keeps the text, but has several cuts to them. So I'm not sure if I understand the matter right, but I don't think there are any insertions in, as with other modern adaptations, film adaptations of Hamlet. I don't think that in these two, there are interventions on the part of the directors regarding the lines and the language. I don't know if I've answered the question, but this is what I've understood from it.
Ma'am?
Yeah?
Ma'am, I have something to add.
Yes, please do.
I have, I think Claudius is actually Hamlet's father.
Can you please develop, because this is one take. What do you mean?
We'll have to prove it.
Yeah.
Good testing.
What I can tell you is that several theatrical...
There's an essay, ma'am. There's an essay. There's an essay to prove it.
In the name, yes?
The psychoanalytical approach to Hamlet.
Oh, the Oedipus complex. Okay. Well, in a nutshell, once again, very, very succinctly put, the Oedipus complex, as you probably know from Freud, he was the one who spoke about it, and then Jones developed it and applied it to Hamlet. The idea was that those who suffer from this complex would actually have some feelings of hate and anger towards their own fathers, because they actually would, they are very attached to their mothers, and they would want to have a relationship with her. And Hamlet's delay from this perspective, from the psychoanalytical perspective, is explained. He doesn't kill Claudius because Claudius did what he actually would have liked to do, or Claudius is in a position that he would have liked to be in, and if he kills Claudius, he's actually in a way killing himself. I don't know if I've managed to
Thank you, Alice. There is another very interesting question from Bhagavan Tripati. So he asks, if fidelity approach is outdated, is there any acceptable degree of infidelity, or any transformation is okay as creative liberty?
Well, this is the problem in adaptation studies. How far can we go, right?
So is the fidelity approach outdated? Do you think it is?
The fidelity approach, if it's outdated, well, people.
The approach is outdated. Is there any acceptable degree of infidelity, or any transformation is okay as creative liberty?
Well, scholars tend to, there are different trends in this direction, and they are quite difficult. That's why this is what recurs in theories of adaptation. Where do we draw the line, so to say? Where do we say, from here on, this play is no longer an adaptation? It has nothing to do with the adapted text. And if you look at Linda Hutchen, or there is also Kitney, who wrote about Shakespearean adaptations, they try to categorize adaptations, and there are those who are closer to the original and others who go further. But I would say that the demarcation line keeps moving. And the idea about fidelity is that we should try to outgrow, in a way, this approach, because it's not, so to put it, fair for the process of adaptation, which involves quite a creative work. And their struggle is to make people analyze and explore adaptations for themselves, not as derivative products. So that's the and in terms of the degrees that we can establish, every scholar tries to categorize them in certain ways. So there's no one definitive answer about it.
Well, there is a question about Act 5, if you would like to answer.
Yeah, I'm trying to find them as well.
Scene begin with two clown trading jokes. Do the jokes make any sense in context of the play? In Act 5, Gravediggers, I guess, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Gravediggers, they are very interesting characters, because if you read carefully those lines, and particularly the dialogue with Hamlet, they are the only ones almost in the entire play who manage to outwit Hamlet, which is very difficult to do. If you remember the dialogue, when he asks who's buried here, he has to, I think, repeat the questions in different ways, and the gravedigger keeps playing on, if you want, the various meanings of who's buried in there. And they are seen, I would say, as figures of common people, but who have this sort of popular wisdom, as we call it, which in this part is almost on the same level with that of Prince Hamlet.
Thank you so much. We have taken so much of your time. It's nearly 6 o'clock, 2.5 hours. I would really
I thank you.
put on record my appreciation and the appreciation of all my colleagues. It was a wonderful lecture, Alice. And I don't think there are any more questions because I took all the similar questions. But if somebody would like to ask the last question.
Sure, please free to.
It's not a question, Shruti. May I come in with thanks? For me, it has been revisiting Hamlet, and maybe your MA student, Shruti, could go into the relationship between brothers, because I think this is a favorite theme in Shakespeare. He himself, maybe he must have been interested in exploring the relationship between brothers. It comes again and again until his last play. So thank you very much, Professor Oana.
I thank you, and I would like to add to what you've said that indeed the relationship between Claudius and Old King Hamlet is a very relevant one, and many directors, theatrical, Peter Brook is one of them, had the same actor play both Claudius and the ghost of Old King Hamlet. And I think that's so interesting because what we see in the play, part of it is Hamlet's perspective on the two of them. And when you have a director making that choice, it makes you wonder, is that gap so large between old Hamlet and Claudius, his brother, or is that only the perception, the very subjective perception of a hurt son, of a son who grieves, of a grieving son? And I have an invitation for your students, Shruti, as well. You will see that at the end of the PowerPoint, I've placed the film posters for two modern adaptations, modern day, that is, adaptations of Hamlet. One you've just mentioned in the beginning, Shruti, is the Indian adaptation of Hamlet, Haider, or I think that's the pronunciation.
Yes.
I've looked it and I couldn't find yet the entire movie, but what I've seen, the trailer and some parts of it on YouTube, I found it really interesting. And I think you could compare that to Michael Olmereida's 2000 modern day adaptation of Hamlet. He places Hamlet in New York in the time of corporations. Claudius is the CEO of a great multinational company. So if you watch those movies, you'd see something very different from what we've watched here today. And I think it would be very nice for you to explore them, particularly the Indian film, because you can, I suppose, use so many things that are very local and specific to your traditions and culture, which we cannot be definitely aware of.
We got a lot of new things to learn from you, from your talk, because as Indians and as Southeast Indians and basically Hindu-dominated population in the classroom, these things were very, very refreshing to know. It was so, it was so good. It was beautiful. It was like revisiting Hamlet and looking at all those things, including the jokers that you explained about, that we used to think that was just a comic relief. But the way you put it, that this was more like popular wisdom. And they were outwitting Hamlet. I've never thought of this aspect, this angle to that thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I would now request Deepshikha Rautray to give a formal vote of thanks. Dr. Rautray. Please unmute yourself.
We cannot hear you.
We cannot hear you. Please unmute yourself.
I have already unmuted.
Okay. No, yes. Be louder, please.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes,
Yeah.
now it's better.
Now we can, it's better. You can be louder.
Yes, on behalf of Berhampur University, I express my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Zaharia for her time, devotion, and that she certainly made it that we have an enriching experience listening to her. It was extremely engaging, educative, and fulfilling. We got to learn so many new perspectives through the cinematic representations. Our sincere gratitude to you for this amazing session. You kept us virtually glued to our devices all the while. I mean, from 3:30 to almost 6 o'clock. How the time passed by, we couldn't just keep a track of it. I mean, it was not just few hours. We took so much of your time. Thank you so much for this outstanding presentation. I also take this opportunity to thank all the participants out there who spared their time for this wonderful session. Thank you again.